Hello all. I wanted to share a quick video of this week's task list because I've received some questions and some concerns regarding the Choose It, um, Try It comments that I wanted you all to make. So if you're in the bigger class, the 25408, then the section where I will cover the Choose It comments are only for this class. Those of you that are in the other class know that you only have one video thus far because it's a very small class compared to this one. So very quickly, I wanted to go into this week's task list and just go over some reminders. So the book talks are due, or it's just one book talk, but it's due either the 12th or the 19th, and it's your choice when you want to turn that in. Remember, it's 5% of your grade, and I have provided a book talk instructions. I have received some questions regarding whether it can be a book talk or a podcast, and it can actually be either one. So it does have to be on the Hate You Give unless you have emailed me and we have negotiated something differently. So it should be the Hate You Give, and it can be a book talk or a podcast. I have not provided podcast instructions, however, because I want to give you the autonomy to emulate whatever podcast you're currently listening to, so you can make it in that style. But of course, the content would be around the Hate You Give. So if you don't listen to podcasts, then obviously don't choose that option. Just go with the book talk option. So another reminder is that the Absolute True Diary of a Part-Time Indian Informal Textual Response is due. This was due um, this weekend, so I hope that you have turned that in. And make sure that you have submitted the Choose It Try It videos according to the dates you chose. And remember that in that same where I put in Google Classroom Choose It Try It in the Choose It Try It slot, you should also submit. I'm looking for that now so I can show you that. You should also submit your actual write-up. So if you go into this section, you will see, please upload the link to your video here in the Google Doc, of course. Please note that the due date is determined by when you signed up, and then also upload the actual write-up for the Choose It, Try It in this same slot. So going back to week 10, I just wanted to remind you of what you should be doing there. Then this week, I wanted you to watch and comment on just one, Choose It, Try It, Share It routine that one of your colleagues had listed for us. So unfortunately, the only ones that are working are the Screencast-O-Matic and this YouTube link. If you go there, you will see it'll take you directly to Lorinda's presentation. So for this week, you only have these four to choose from. I think that there are three or four that, because the link was uploaded as the link was uploaded and somehow it was linked to that user's Google account. That's why you guys can't open it, but I can. So from now on, when you upload the link, make sure that it's a YouTube link on its own, that it's not linked to any particular account. So, but all of these do work, so you can choose one of those and make at least two comments that discuss how you would use it in your own content, and then give a specific text that you think would work well with that particular Choose It, Try It routine. Then for the second thing I want you to do is read and respond. So I want you to choose one article on students with disabilities, and all the articles can be found in the week 10 readings folder. So if we go back into the classroom, you will see that there is a week 10 readings. And if you go in there, you'll see that you have to scroll through, but that all of the articles for the week are there. So you have to choose, as I said, you have to choose just one article from Students with Disabilities section. And then I wanted you to respond by creating one activity around the chosen article that uses the concepts from reciprocal teaching or collaborative strategic reading. And this is my way of making us go back into material that we dealt with at the beginning of the semester. So I have placed under the disabilities response in Google Classroom, I've actually placed resources there that will help you. I've placed the actual articles again, and I've also put in there articles that use reciprocal teaching in math, and articles that use reciprocal teaching. Actually, two of them are math articles. I will also go back to this lot and place more resources around both collaborative strategic reading and reciprocal teaching. But I did want us to go back, and I will put this up again. This was actually one of the PowerPoints that you had at the very beginning of the semester. And I wanted us to just quickly review what collaborative strategic reading is. And it's, as you might remember, it's actually very similar to reciprocal teaching, but it has similar steps. I think I would suggest the collaborative strategic reading is really used more with informational text, but it can be used with fiction and nonfiction informational text. I think it's a matter of you figuring out what strategy you want to try out first with your students. And once they become exceedingly comfortable with that strategy, so I would say at least 2 9 weeks, then you could in fact introduce reciprocal teaching as well. So for collaborative strategic reading, the goal is obviously better comprehension. And there are 4 steps to collaborative strategic reading. There's the preview. So this is done before. It's like watching the trailer of a movie. This is done before they actually begin to read. They make predictions. They look at pictures, at all of the text features, things that we think are so obvious that students would know how to do, but they really don't know how to do. Or they just completely bypass that information. And then during reading, we have a click and clunk strategy, get the gist, and after reading, there is a wrap up strategy. So you would have to introduce the strategies to your students. There should be a lot of guided practice. So after students have developed proficiency applying the strategies through teacher-led activities, then you can form heterogeneous groups or homogeneous groups. It really depends on, on where you are in your classroom. For example, if you're teaching a class of developmental reading, or emergent bilinguals, and you have different grade levels, but you decide that you want to group them on their language ability, you could do that as well. So each student performs a defined role in implementing these strategies. Can you do this one-on-one with just one student? Definitely, because that one student can take on all of these roles. It's just a matter of practicing with them how to do that. So for many of you that are already special educators or are working in a co-teaching model, then it should be very easy for you to implement this one-on-one with a student. It's a matter of going through each of the steps, and they become the click and clunk expert. They become their own get the gist. Basically, it's just a way for them to engage with text that they usually don't. So these are the students that can obviously decode and they can read, but they don't know what they just read. So again, the before strategy is a preview strategy. I have placed a link here for Reading Rockets that discusses collaborative strategic reading in more detail. So you're more than welcome to go there for more information. Reading Rockets is a great resource if you don't already use it. Um, so in the preview strategy, you introduce to them that it's just like going to the movies. Um, so in a trailer, you kind of learn who's going to be in the movie. Um, Maybe you even can um, denote what period the movie will be in. You might make a decision about whether or not you might like the movie, or you want to go see it, or you don't. Perhaps you have questions. So basically, everything that they already do when they watch a movie trailer, these are things that, I mean, they know the movie's based in the future. If they're watching a movie trailer for Bohemian Rhapsody, for example, that just came out, they know that it's about a rock band. They know whether it looks interesting or not, whether they recognize the actors or recognize, that it's actually Queen. So all these things that they already do, now it's time for them to apply them to reading. Um, then this is the during reading strategy. So basically, you can use click and clunk cards. So if there's a click, that means that the main idea of the sentence has been understood, and students can keep going. They can keep moving. They can keep reading. But if there's a clunk, then you use fix-up strategies. And clunks usually happen when students are really stuck on vocabulary words that they don't know. As we've been looking at for the last couple of weeks, vocabulary is imperative. Making sure that they have and they gain more vocabulary and they have plenty of interactions with new vocabulary words is essential to comprehension. I have been grading those vocabulary games, and I'm making suggestions throughout. And one of the great resources that you have is the core book and the raw book for um, thinking of ways to really meaningfully engage with vocabulary. Again, visualizing vocabulary, that article that we read some time ago is also great for that. But at the back of the core book, there's a great handout on prefix, suffix, and root words. So it teaches students how to come to the meaning of the word without having to have the teacher tell them and without having to look it up in the dictionary, or at least it tries to get them there. So it's a great handout that you can make copies of, obviously, in the back of the core book. And then there's something else at the back of the core book that I've been suggesting, which is the hot shot list. And the hot shot list is basically boxes, basically, right? It's all set up in boxes, and it makes them interact with the word 3 different times. So the way that I've had teachers use it in the past is that you give the students a hotshot list, and you let them know that they have to interact with the word 3 times to get 1 point. So that if they only have one interaction with the word, then it won't count. And you'll know exactly what I mean when you go to the back of the book. But basically, there's a box that says the word. So the student writes in the word. If the word is treacherous, then they write in the word, and then they have to say the place and time where you heard this word. So if the first time you heard this word was in Dr. Perez's class, then that's the date that you put. Then it has a box of how was the word used. So basically, you have to provide a sentence with the word, and then finally, what does the word mean? And the students have to fill in all these boxes. So then the next time, because there are 3 slots for that same word, then they have to find treacherous again. So they have to find a way of interacting with the word treacherous. So did they maybe listen to it somewhere, because now they actually know it and they might have heard it throughout the week? Or if not, then they have to create opportunities where they use the word. So I went up to my mom and I created a sentence about our treacherous neighbor and how sneaky he is. So then now this is my second interaction with the word treacherous. And then there's one third time, and they only get the full point if they've used the word 3 times properly in the sentence. Again, it's in the back of the core book. I highly advise that you use that. Again, the clunks are usually around vocabulary, right? So after students identify clunks, you can use fix-up strategies to figure out the clunks. And those fix-up strategies are the ones that they really have to start incorporating and kind of owning as much as possible. So you definitely can use clunk cards that you can make as a group to keep up of the fix-up strategies. And the fix-up strategies are reread the sentence without the word and think about what the information, think about that, what information is provided that would help you understand the meaning of the word. Reread the sentence with the clunk and the sentence before and after the clunk. So basically, they read the sentence again that has the word treacherous, for example, that they didn't understand, but then they go and they read the sentence before that and the sentence after that to try to figure out, okay, so where's my clunk? What could this word mean? And then you can have them look for prefixes or suffixes. So basically word morphology. If, however, you have not covered word morphology at all in your class, then this is not a fix-up strategy that will help the students. You have to actually cover what that would look like. And again, there's a great handout for that at the back of the core book. And you should create mini lessons for prefix, suffix, and root words, because that becomes exceedingly effective in helping them, fix up the clunk. Then they could break the word apart and look for similar words that they may know. So again, and then finally, well, not finally, the third step is the getting the gist. So, and this is, I think of this as an adaptation of a headline or a tweet, right? So you can only have, I normally have students write a sentence that's only 10 words. So tell me the most important information from the paragraph in 10 words or less. And this tells me, okay, now you got the gist. Use the question words to explain what happened. So the question words are who, did what, and why. So even if you're thinking about a history lesson, so if you're thinking about slavery in the 13 colonies, well, then who was doing this, the what, the enslaving, and then why, right? Because we needed, we needed, that's funny. Anyway, they convinced themselves that they needed slaves to work the tobacco fields. So that would be the why. So then you could give a tweet or a status. I've also provided a Kelly Gallagher's reading minute. So it's right here. And if you Google Kelly Gallagher and the reading minute, I'll also put this in the classroom. But basically, it's a strategy she uses where she reads out loud to students for 1 minute. And they have to create a sentence that just gives the gist of what it was that she read for 1 minute. And it could be a piece of poetry, it could be anything. So for more on that, you can go into the website. And then finally, it's the wrap-up strategy. So if you were a teacher, what questions would you ask on a test? Basically, the wrap-up strategy is not then summarizing, because they've already summarized in getting the gist, right? In getting the gist, they tell us like what happened, like what was the most important part of that paragraph they read. Because oftentimes students that have difficulty with comprehension get lost in the details. And I think that you have witnessed that, because when I was reading your reading conferences, many of you point out that some of the students that were struggling after they read the page or two that you had them read would really talk to you about details when you asked them to summarize, and really didn't understand like what had been the most important, the main point of what they had read. So in wrap up, you really have students ask questions, and you teach them how to ask questions. So tell students to use who, what, when, where, and why. So and how, so the 5 W's and the H as a way to begin to ask questions. Tell students to pretend they are teachers and to think of questions that they would be asked on a test. And then, since you're working in groups, other students should try to answer these questions. And if a question can't be answered, what might it tell the students? Maybe it's a bad question or they all have to go back. And I will also provide the QAR, like the question levels that you can use. And I think I've actually already done that at the beginning of the semester, but I'll do that again. So, so things you should consider when you're thinking about collaborative strategic reading is how big is your classroom? How many groups will you have? They will have, each group should only have four people in the group. And then how are you going to use the roles, the text selection, how are you going to assign roles, your role as a teacher, and do you want it to include writing? So those are things that you should consider. The text selection is obvious, right? It depends on whatever you're reading, because think this is a strategy. This is unlike text sets, which I think is another way to provide access points for students. This is not that. Text sets really ask you to think about, okay, I have an anchor text in my class that I have to read, which is the grade level text. But in order to get my students to really engage with this probably difficult material, I'm going to select pictures, videos, and text that are at their grade level so that they can access the material. So that's also part of our job. But this is a strategy, and this strategy can be applied to any and every text that they read. And you should tell them that it should have transfer across the board. So you can do it in science class. You can use CSR in science. You can use CSR in history, in English language arts, and even in math. So again, these are some possible group roles. You have a leader, a clunk expert, an announcer for previews, a monitor, a reporter, so somebody that's asking the questions or answering the questions. And that's all I wanted to discuss about the collaborative strategic reading. I just wanted to give you a review. So again, this was for this section, which is read and respond. So you choose one article from the week 10 readings, and then you can choose a strategy. You create one activity around the chosen article that uses the concepts from reciprocal teaching or collaborative strategic reading. So basically you choose either one and then create a mini lesson that fits with the article. As you know, there are various steps and roles, so you can choose just one step. Then the next thing to do this week is review and create. Review the linked documents to literature circles and choose one job to take on and create a response that is anchored on your reading. So these are the two readings in question, taking it to the street and reading for a better world. And if you go into your Google Classroom, you'll see that I've created a slot that is literature circles. You have the document on literature circles, and you have the two articles in question. So if you go into the literature circles document, you see that it's a rather long document, but it explains what literature circles are, the key ingredients, and types of literature circles, and establishing group roles. So when I say choose a role, this is what I mean by that. You can choose any of the roles that your students could potentially take on. So in literature circles, you can have a questioner or a discussion director, a literary luminary. So it's someone that reads the passage and is good at pointing out why this particular section is so interesting. Maybe it used a lot of figurative language, or vivid, or or there was a lot of imagery. So something that they want to point out. Sometimes the literary luminary is actually confused. So, and that's fine. So they'll bring up a section in literature circles that kind of confuse them. And then this is something that they could discuss with their group. So a summarizer obviously summarizes the reading. So usually when you do literature circles, you can have literature circles where you have groups of students that are actually reading different texts all together. So you have a group of students reading Wonder, and you have a group of students reading The Hate You Give, and you have another group reading um, Speak. So let's say that you have those three different, because you've given students choice, which is um, so important. Um, and then you can have these literature circles where students are really coming. They're the ones that are responsible for the text. You can create literature circles around short stories, because many of us are not reading novels, or have, or are in self-contained classrooms that perhaps are not ready for full-on novels. But you can definitely do literature circles around short stories. You can even do literature circles around articles. So then there's the role of an illustrator. So basically somebody so you have that student that just loves that's so artistic. This should be his role. You can take on the role of a connector. So basically it's somebody that makes personal connections to the text, or to things that they've learned outside of school in their own life. So text to self, text to text connections. There's a word wizard, and your job is to find words that you do not know in the readings. And first that person tries to figure it out. If this is like getting the gist. Or I mean, sorry, this is like somebody that's trying to figure out a clunk. And they can go through those fixed sub strategies with the group together. Um, there's like a gist person, so the person that basically gets the gist of what the reading for that week. So if they've read two chapters on their own, or even if they've read an article in class, so this is that person that helps them come up with that sentence that says, I got this, I understood this. Or if there's like a particular theme coming out. So when I talk about literature circles in terms of your response, this is the section that I mean, in terms of you choose a role and you anchor it on one of the readings that you chose for the week. If you scroll through the rest of this, this is basically resources for how you would use literature circles, and you can actually use the um, the text that's here to answer this week's assignment. So if you decide that you're going to be the connector, then you can copy and paste this, and this can be the way that you turn in the assignment. And if you scroll down, there's one for literary luminary. There's one for the illustrator, for the summarizer, for the word wizard. As I said, since you are doing this only once, you'd only have one date. But if you were actually conducting literature circles in your class, then they could potentially meet on one article 2 or 3 times. So they would have the same roles during that reading. I would never switch roles for something that short. But if they're all reading a novel together, then perhaps they would switch roles midway through the novel or after a certain number of chapters. Um, I wanted to see. So again, this was the last step for this week's task list. If you have any questions, please make sure to text me, because I do respond more quickly that way, or if not, email me. I am in the process of grading, so you will be getting feedback. If there are APA issues in your vocabulary game, or well, in the reading conferences, I didn't ask for APA, but in the vocabulary game, I will be deducting points, but I will allow you to revise once you've corrected any APA issues. And that's it. I hope you have a lovely rest of your week.